Hello and welcome to our 5 minutes with Ekaterina Russian poetry. Our poetess for today is Belла Ахмадулина. She is a great example of Soviet poetess loved by millions. The verses of her poems were put into music and they became the theme songs of Soviet movies loved by people, and also lots of her poems became songs which you could hear if you lived 50 or 60 years ago. She was born in 1937 in Moscow in the mixed Tatar, Italian, Russian family. Her father was working as a deputy minister and her mother was a translator in the KGB. Parents were always busy and Bella was brought up by her grandmother who wanted to name her Isabella because everything Spanish was in the top fashion at the time, and she thought that Isabella would be a good name, but Bella herself decided to shorten it and she did it successfully. When the war started, they were evacuated to Kazan and Bella didn't have a chance to go to school. Instead, her grandmother tried to give her the best family education. She read together with the granddaughter the best pieces of Russian literature, Pushkin, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, the whole literature. She was too small probably for Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, but they read the best pieces of the Russian literature. And Bella, starting from the early childhood, decided that she will be the poetess, she will make some pieces of literature. Starting literally from a very young age, she never changed her decision. But when she said about the decision to her family, to her parents, and to the friends of her parents, they thought that it's not as serious for a young lady. And when the time came and she had to enter the university, her parents persuaded her to go to the journalistic faculty, to become a journalist. She said, yes, sure. But thankfully or regretfully for the parents, she didn't pass the entrance examinations. And the next year, she entered the literature institute, where she was excluded almost immediately, maybe after 2 years of study, she was excluded from this university because she refused to sign a letter against another famous poet who is Boris Pasternak. There was a letter from literators saying that he is anti-Soviet and he is not worth to be in Soviet Union. And she thought she liked the creativity of Pasternak, she liked his poem, and she didn't want to sign it, she didn't want to lose her principles, and she stayed on her own. And officially they excluded her because she didn't pass the examination of Marxism-Leninism theory, which was the whole course. Even my mom, she had to study it in the university. Then Ukraine was the part of Soviet Union. All Soviet people had to pass these exams, and they were very hard always. So formally, because she didn't pass this exam, she was just thrown away from the university, and she had to find a job. She struggled to find a job. And I should mention that during the whole these years, starting from the childhood, she was writing poems. And her first poetry, actually, it's very touching. I was surprised when I read that her first childish poems, she was in the literature club at the time, were dedicated to the rights of black people in America, because she read The House of Uncle Tom, book, and she never met this problem. There were no African people in the Soviet Union at the time, or almost no. She never met anyone from this part of the world, but she was very sorry for African Americans at the time, and her first poems were dedicated to the racism and how it's not right. That's a very interesting fact I didn't know myself. After being expelled from the university, she tried to find a job, and without education it was extremely hard. So she had to go from Moscow to far east, which was Siberia, to the Irkutsk city, where she found a job as a journalist in one of the local newspapers. Because she was very talented, the head of this newspaper helped her to go back to the university so she can finish her education. During these years, she met her first husband, Evgeny Yevtushenko, who were already successful, and they lived together for a very short time, only for 3 years. In future, Bella will meet 3 more men whom she will marry, but this first marriage, early marriage, it was lucky and unlucky for her. It was a big luck because Yevtushenko, of course, helped her. She was invited to different literature evenings. She was very protected by him at the time. Of course, without his protection, she will do the great, but it will be much harder at the time because she was very straightforward. If she didn't like the system, she said, I don't like the system. If she said that I wouldn't support this, she just need to sign it. And she said, I wouldn't support it. I wouldn't sign the letter against Boris Pasternak, and she wouldn't do it. If she wanted to help somebody, she would help. She helped so many of her friends who were against the Soviet system. So, of course, without some external protection, it would be hard for her not to repeat the destiny of Olga Bergolz, for example. We read together her poems. You can go back and just review it if you want. So, she would literally suffer a lot being so strong, having such a strong principles. But because she had good friends around her, they protected her a lot during her lifetime. And at this time, she's starting to be more and more famous. And when she was only 22 years old, she wrote a poem that was used in the movie that everybody knows. It's The Irony of Destiny. And this became the theme song of this movie. So everybody instantly started to know who Bella is. She became famous. She started to do literature evenings. She started to go to the theater, to read her poems. And she was in the high demand. But then 60s came, and now she is so-called 60s writer. And 60s writers, the generation of dissident poets. Around her, one by one, her friends were either sent away from the Soviet Union or arrested or suffered in any kind of bad way. But again, she was talented. She never wrote anything about Soviet regime. Her poetry was lyrical, about friendship, about love. But after the house of Uncle Tom, they were never political or never about freedom, about nothing, never ever. But nevertheless, because she was friends with so many people who were literally arrested, also after she issued one of her poetry collections, they just forbid her to write. They just silenced her. She was never arrested. She was never literally suffered for any kind of ideas, but they just silenced her. They just stopped to invite her to any kind of events. They forbid her to read her poems from the scene, and of course they never published her. In 1974, she met Boris Messerer, who was the true love of her life and with whom she spent long years after. And he also was so fond of her poetry that he helped her a lot. He helped to publish her poetry when it was allowed during so-called rebuild time of Soviet Union, and after the collapse of Soviet Union, their life was quite good as she could publish her poetry again, and she was recognized, welcomed, invited to different TV shows until the early 2000s when she got very ill and she had cancer, and in 2010 she died from the heart attack, been sick for the long years. That's the life of the poetess, and she was great. She was great in the way she can reflect the reality. She was great in the way she treated her popularity. She never thought about herself as a star, and other people's downside. If you watch her interviews, she always was modest, humble, and she of course understood how huge her talent was, but she never made herself better than other people or look better than other people. And the quality she appreciated the most in other people and cultivated in herself, it was the friendship. So it's hard to imagine the best friends that Bella would be for her friends. Today I want to read together two of her poems. The first one was interesting for me, particularly because it says how difficult it is sometimes to create something, and how creativity can just slip out, and how sometimes you do need to find some kind of inspiration. And the second is very lyrical and typical to Belла Ахмадулина. If you like it, don't forget about your likes. Check if you're subscribed to this channel. It wouldn't change anything for you, but it will make me happy. So let's read together. Белла Ахмадулина, «Другое». Что сделалось? Зачем я не могу, уж целый год не знаю, не умею слагать стихи, и только немоту, тяжелую в моих губах имею. Вы скажете, ну вот уже строфа, 4 строчки в ней, она готова. Я не о том. Во мне уже стара привычка ставить слово после слова. Порядок этот ведает рука. Я не о том. Как это прежде было, когда происходила не строка, другое что-то. Только что забыла. Да, то другое, разве знала страх, когда шалила голосом так смело? Само, как смех, смеялась на устах и плакала, как плач, если хотела. The second one is молитва. Ты, населивший мглу вселенной, то явно видный, то едва, огонь невнятный и нетленный, материи или божества, ты ангелы или природа, спасение или напасть, что ты не есть, твоя свобода, твоя торжественная власть. Не благодать твою, не почесть, судьба земли, оставь со мной лишь этой комнаты непрочность, ничтожную в судьбе земной. Зачем с разбега бесприютства влюбилась я в ее черты, всем разумом до безрассудства, всем зрением до слепоты. Кровать, 2 стула ненадежных, свет лампы, сумерки, графин. И, видно, изгородь продолжен красой невидимых равнин. Творилась в этих бедных стенах, оставшись тайною моей, печаль пустых, благословенных, от всех сокрытых зимних дней. Здесь совмещались стол и локоть, тетрадь ждала карандаша, и, провожая мимолетность, беспечно мучилась душа. That's it. That were our poems for today. Like the whole poetry of Belла Ahmadulina, they have the element of sadness in themselves, and in one of her interviews she told that the sadness and the sufferings are immanent to poets, and every poet should go through sufferings. Let me know what do you think about it. Are you agree or disagree with it? And also let me know what do you think about these poems. for me, this sadness in the last lines, they're starting in optimistic way, but the further you're reading, the further the story develops, you're starting to feel you're feeling it. It's not about the wordings, you're just having this feeling of something going over and over you, and then you understand that you're a little bit sad and thoughtful at the same time. That's my opinion. Tell me your ideas about it. I'm excited to read it. I love your comments as usual. Also, thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to my patrons on Patreon. Because of your support, I understand that this channel makes difference, that you like it a lot. If you are not with me there, please consider supporting me on Patreon if you can. That motivates me so much to create more of these videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to meet you very soon. Goodbye.